I didn't lose my farm in a storm. I lost it on paper. One morning, I opened my mail and read a sentence that froze me. Property transfer completed. I owned 3,500 acres. No loans, no disputes. But according to my HOA, it was already sold. No warning, no signature, no permission. They said it was legal. They said their rules allowed it. What they didn't know was that one hidden clause in their own paperwork would destroy them. So I stayed quiet. I didn't fight back right away, because by the time this ended, I didn't just get my land back. Every HOA member involved lost their home. I never planned to talk about this story online. For a long time, I tried to forget it. But what happened to me wasn't small, and it wasn't rare. It started with land. A lot of land. 3,500 acres of farmland. Flat stretches. Rolling hills. Creeks that never dried up. Fields my grandfather walked every morning until his legs gave out. This land wasn't an investment to us. It was family. My grandfather bought most of it after the war. Piece by piece. One handshake at a time. No banks. No shortcuts. He used to say, if you take care of the land, it'll take care of you. And he lived by that. When he passed, the farm came to me. Not suddenly. Not secretly. There was a will. There were lawyers. There were years of planning. Everything was clean. Everything was legal. I paid the taxes. I maintained the fences. I leased parts of it to local farmers. Corn on one side, hay on another. Cattle grazing in the back fields. Quiet life. Hard work. No drama. Then the development arrived. It started small. A few survey trucks. Some orange flags in the dirt. Then signs went up. Future home of Cedar Ridge Estates. Luxury homes. Gated entry. Private roads. An HOA. At first, I didn't think much of it. They weren't on my land. They were next to it. People build houses. That's normal. A few months later, the first letter came. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't threatening. It said, "Welcome, neighbor." They introduced themselves. The HOA board. They said they wanted a positive relationship. They invited me to a community meeting. I didn't go. I don't attend HOA meetings. I don't live in one. And I don't need permission to exist. The second letter was different. It mentioned aesthetic concerns. They said my fencing didn't match the community look. They said some of my equipment was visible from the road. They said livestock noises were disruptive. I laughed when I read it. This was farmland, not a park. I ignored it. Then came the third letter. This one mentioned shared land usage. That phrase caught my attention. They claimed that part of my land fell under a historical agricultural easement connected to the development. That didn't make sense. I'd read every document tied to that property. There was no such thing. I called my attorney. He asked for the letter. He reviewed it. Then he paused. "This is strange," he said. He explained that sometimes HOAs try to stretch language. They take old zoning maps. They reinterpret them. Most of the time, it goes nowhere. He told me not to worry. He told me to keep records. I did. Then the letters stopped. For about 6 months, nothing happened. The development grew fast. Houses sold quickly. Families moved in. I kept farming. Same routine. Same early mornings. Until one morning, everything changed. I opened my mailbox like I always did. Bills. Local ads. County notice. The county letter was thicker than usual. I opened it standing by the truck. The first line didn't make sense. Property transfer completed. I read it again. Then again. The parcel number listed wasn't wrong. It was mine. All of it. 3,500 acres. Transferred. Sold. I felt cold. Not angry. Not confused. Cold. I drove straight to my attorney's office. Didn't call. Didn't text. He read the notice slowly. Too slowly. Then he leaned back. "Did you sign anything?" he asked. "No." "Did you authorize a sale?" "No." "Did you even talk to a buyer?" "No." He nodded once. That's what I thought. We pulled county records. Title filings. Deeds. There it was. A recorded sale. Filed 2 weeks earlier. Seller. Oak Ridge HOA Authority. Buyer. A commercial development group. The price was listed. It was far below market value. My name was nowhere on it. Instead, the HOA claimed administrative authority over the land under a community land integration clause. A clause that didn't exist. My attorney didn't raise his voice. That scared me more than anger would have. This isn't a mistake, he said. This is intentional. I asked him one question. How bad is it? He looked at me. Bad enough that they think you won't fight back. That night, I didn't sleep. I walked the fields instead, listened to the wind, thought about my grandfather, about every fence post he set by hand, every acre he protected. Someone had decided it was theirs now, and they had done it quietly. What I didn't know yet was this. They hadn't just stolen land. They had created a paper trail so arrogant, so careless, that it would eventually destroy every single one of them. But at that moment, all I felt was one thing. They thought I was powerless. The next few days felt unreal. I kept waking up expecting it all to be a mistake, a typo, a clerical error. But every document said the same thing. According to the county, my land was no longer mine. My attorney told me not to confront the HOA yet. He said something important. People who commit fraud rely on speed and fear, he said. If you slow down, they start making mistakes. So we slowed down. First, we pulled every public record tied to the sale. Every filing, every signature, every date. That's when the patterns started to show. The HOA had created a paper trail that looked official at first glance. Stamped documents, legal language, recorded meetings. But once you read closely, things didn't line up. Dates were off. Signatures didn't match. Meeting minutes referenced votes that never happened. They had claimed an emergency board session, but state law required notice, and there was none. They claimed a land integration clause, but the clause referenced a zoning map from 30 years ago, a map that had been voided. They had used authority they did not have, and they assumed no one would notice. Then we found the most important detail. 3 HOA board members were listed as consultants for the buyer, quietly, buried in the disclosure forms. That meant they didn't just approve the sale. They benefited from it. That changed everything. My attorney leaned back in his chair. This isn't just theft, he said. This is self-dealing. I asked him what that meant for me. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he asked me something. How patient can you be? I didn't understand the question at first. He explained. If we rushed into court, the HOA would claim confusion. They'd say it was a misunderstanding. They try to settle quietly. But if we waited, if we let them move forward, they would lock themselves into their own lies. So we waited. The developers started showing up on my land. Survey crews first, then trucks, then heavy equipment parked near the access roads. I filmed everything, from public property, legally. I didn't block them, didn't yell, didn't touch anything. I just documented. The HOA sent me an email. It said, any interference with authorized development activity will result in penalties. Authorized. That word made my stomach turn. I replied with one sentence. I do not recognize your authority over my land. They didn't respond. A week later, I got a cease and desist letter from the HOA's attorney. It claimed I was trespassing on community-owned land. That's when my attorney smiled for the first time. Good, he said. They're committing it to writing. Behind the scenes, we dug deeper. We subpoenaed internal HOA emails, financial records, meeting logs. What we found was ugly. The board had been planning this for over a year. They referred to my land as in used acreage. They talked about forcing consolidation. One email stood out. A board member wrote, he's just one guy. He won't have the money or energy to fight this. I read that line over and over, not because it hurt, but because it explained everything. They didn't see land. They didn't see history. They saw an obstacle. Meanwhile, the neighborhood didn't know what was happening. Homeowners thought the development was expanding naturally. They were told the land was already owned by the HOA. Some even congratulated the board. They thought property values would rise. I didn't correct them. Not yet. My attorney filed something quietly. A title challenge. No lawsuit yet. No headlines. Just a legal notice that froze the transaction clock, that forced the developer to pause funding. Banks hate uncertainty. That pause triggered panic inside the HOA. Emails started flying. They argued with each other, blamed each other. One board member wanted to settle. Another wanted to push forward fast. They chose speed. That was their second mistake. They held another emergency meeting. Again, without proper notice. Again, without authority. And again, they documented it. We collected everything. Then we found the clause that changed the entire case. Buried in the HOA bylaws was a section on fiduciary duty. It said, in cases of fraud, illegal transfer, or misrepresentation, board members may be held personally liable. Personally, not the HOA, not insurance. Them, their houses, their savings, everything. My attorney looked at me. This is where karma comes in, he said, but only if you stay disciplined. The HOA sent me one final letter. It offered a settlement. They wanted me to accept a fraction of the land value. They wanted silence. I didn't respond. Instead, we filed a lawsuit. Fraud, forgery, racketeering, title theft, and we named names. Every board member involved, individually. That filing went public. Within days, the neighborhood exploded. Homeowners demanded answers. Banks froze HOA accounts. Insurance providers pulled coverage. And the people who thought they controlled everything realized they were standing on nothing but paper lies. That was the moment the balance shifted. They had tried to take my land quietly. Now the truth was loud, and it was only getting started. The lawsuit changed everything overnight. Before that, the HOA acted confident, almost relaxed, like they were used to getting their way. After the filing went public, that confidence vanished. I didn't hear it directly at first. I felt it. The developer trucks stopped showing up. The survey flags stayed in the ground longer than they should have. Emails from the HOA came faster and sounded different. They were no longer formal. They were nervous. One message said they wanted to clear up misunderstandings. Another said they were open to dialogue. A third suggested mediation, all within 2 days. My attorney told me not to reply. Let them talk, he said. Every word they write now matters. Meanwhile, the homeowners started asking questions. People who had trusted the board began to notice things didn't add up. Why were accounts frozen? Why was insurance suddenly gone? Why was a private farm being called community land? Some homeowners reached out to me directly. They weren't angry. They were confused. I kept my answer short. I never sold my land. I never authorized the HOA to act for me. This is in court now. That was enough. Inside the HOA, panic took over. We saw it in the emails. Board members blamed each other. One claimed he was misled by legal counsel. Another said she never voted yes. Another insisted it was standard procedure. But the documents told a different story. They had voted. They had signed. They had benefited. Then came the first resignation. One board member stepped down for personal reasons. He thought that would protect him. It didn't. My attorney explained something important. You don't escape liability by quitting after the crime, he said. That resignation actually helped us. It showed fear. The court scheduled the first hearing. It wasn't a trial, just preliminary motions. But the courtroom was full. HOA attorneys, developer attorneys, board members sitting stiff and quiet. I sat behind my attorney, hands folded, didn't speak. The judge reviewed the filings carefully. He asked one question that silenced the room. Where's the owner's signature? No one answered. The HOA attorney tried to argue authority. Rules. Bylaws. The judge stopped him. Rules do not override property law, he said. Then he issued temporary orders. All development halted. All proceeds frozen. All HOA actions restricted. And one more thing. He allowed discovery to expand. That was the moment the trap fully closed. Discovery meant subpoenas, personal records, private emails, bank statements. The board members were no longer hiding behind the HOA. They were exposed as individuals. The pressure was immediate. One board member tried to refinance his house. Denied. Another tried to sell an investment property quietly. Blocked. Banks don't like unresolved fraud cases. Neither do buyers. One board member's spouse contacted my attorney. They wanted to talk. Off the record. My attorney declined. Everything goes through court now, he said. At home, the stress caught up with me. I wasn't sleeping much. I wasn't farming much either. I spent more time reading documents than walking fields. At night, I thought about the risk. Even with a strong case, nothing is guaranteed. Court takes time, money, energy. Some people settle just to stop the pain. But every time I doubted myself, I remembered that email. He's just one guy. That sentence kept me going. During discovery, we found a smoking gun. A recorded HOA meeting. Not the official minutes. the raw audio. One board member joked about the sale. "She'll never know until it's done," he said. Another laughed. "He won't have the stomach for court." That recording changed the tone of the case. Intent matters. And they had admitted it. The developer backed out completely after that. They filed their own lawsuit against the HOA, claimed they were misled. The HOA was now fighting on two fronts. Legal bills exploded. HOA dues tripled. Homeowners were furious. Emergency meetings turned into shouting matches. Some residents demanded the entire board resign. Others threatened lawsuits of their own. The community fractured. I stayed quiet. Silence can be powerful. Then came the motion that scared them the most. Personal liability enforcement. My attorney requested that the court allow claims against board members' personal assets. Homes, savings, retirement accounts. The judge approved it for review. That's when the phone calls started. Not emails. Calls. Unknown numbers. Voicemails left late at night. I didn't know. I was told it was legal. "We can fix this." One board member showed up at my farm gate. Unannounced. I didn't open it. I spoke through the intercom. "This is not the place," I said. He left. A week later, the court issued another order. Preliminary finding of fraud. That phrase hit hard. Fraud isn't a mistake. It's a choice. From that point on, everything moved faster. Insurance formally denied coverage. Legal costs shifted to individuals. Two board members put their homes on the market. Quietly. At first. But listings are public. People noticed. Local news picked it up. Not my name. Not yet. Just the HOA. Local HOA under investigation for property fraud. The board released a statement. They blamed legal confusion. They blamed past leadership. The judge wasn't impressed. Neither was I. I stood on my land one evening. Sun setting behind the hills. For the first time in months, I felt something different. Not anger. Not fear. Control. They had tried to erase me with paperwork. Now that same paperwork was undoing them. And the final judgment hadn't even arrived yet. By the time the main hearing arrived, everyone knew this case was no longer small. What started as a quiet land grab had turned into a public mess. The courtroom was packed again, more than before. Reporters this time. Not many, but enough. Homeowners sat in the back rows. Some angry, some scared, some just curious how far this would go. The HOA board members sat together, but they didn't look united anymore. They didn't look at each other much. Their lawyers did most of the talking. Fast, careful, defensive. My attorney spoke slowly, calmly. He walked the judge through the timeline, one step at a time. The fake authority, the forged filings, the secret meetings, the financial benefit. He didn't dramatize anything. He didn't need to. The documents did the work. When the audio recording played, the room went quiet. The joke, the laughter, the casual way they talked about taking land that wasn't theirs. I watched the judge's face. He didn't react much, but he wrote a lot. The HOA attorney tried to argue intent again, tried to claim poor advice, tried to shift blame. The judge stopped him. "This court does not excuse fraud because it was convenient," he said. Then he asked a question that changed everything. Why did none of the board members verify ownership before selling? No one answered. Because there was no answer. The judge took a recess. 30 minutes felt like hours. When he came back, his decision was firm. He ruled that the sale was illegal. Void from the start. Title returned to me immediately. But that wasn't the part that broke them. Next, he ruled on liability. He found that multiple board members acted knowingly, that they exceeded their authority, that they benefited personally. As a result, they were personally responsible for damages, legal costs, and penalties. Personally, the HOA itself was not protected. I heard someone gasp behind me. The judge continued. He ordered asset reviews. He approved liens where necessary. He allowed forced liquidation if payments were not met. In plain language, that meant this. If they couldn't pay, their houses would. The hearing ended quietly. No shouting, no drama, just the sound of chairs moving and people standing up slowly. Outside the courtroom, reporters asked questions. I didn't answer. I walked past them. The board members didn't talk either. They looked smaller now. In the weeks that followed, reality set in. Legal bills came due. Judgments were calculated. The numbers were high, much higher than anyone expected. Insurance paid nothing. HOA funds were already frozen and insufficient. So the burden shifted, one by one. First, a board member sold his rental property. Then another sold a vacation home. Still not enough. Then came primary residences. For sale signs appeared in the neighborhood. Not all at once, but enough that people noticed the pattern. Neighbors talked. Rumors spread. Trust evaporated. Homeowners demanded meetings. Demanded resignations. By the end of the month, the entire board was gone. Some resigned. Some were removed. It didn't matter. The damage was done. The HOA itself barely survived. Membership votes stripped it of most authority. Special oversight was assigned. The community never felt the same again. As for me, I got my land back on paper immediately. But emotionally, it took longer. The sense of safety doesn't return overnight. I walked the fields again, checked fences, talked to tenants. Everything looked the same, but I wasn't. People sometimes think revenge feels loud, explosive. This didn't. It felt quiet, heavy, final. I didn't celebrate. I didn't smile much either. I just felt relief. The kind you feel after holding your breath for too long. One afternoon, my attorney called. "It's done," he said. "All enforcement actions are moving forward." I thanked him. Then I sat on the tailgate of my truck and watched the sun drop behind the hills. For the first time since this started, I slept that night. But the story wasn't over yet, because karma doesn't end at court. It follows people home. The court ruling ended the legal fight, but it didn't end the fallout. That part took longer, and it was quieter. Judgments don't ruin lives in one loud moment. They work slowly, day by day. The first house sold within 6 weeks. It belonged to the HOA president, the one who signed most of the documents. He didn't announce it, didn't say goodbye. The listing just appeared one morning. Below market value. Quick sale. People noticed. Neighbors started connecting dots. They remembered meetings. Promises. The confidence with which he spoke. That confidence was gone now. Another board member tried to fight the lien on his house. Filed motions. Delayed. The judge denied them all. The law was clear. When he couldn't refinance or borrow, he had no choice. The house went up for sale too. Families watched from their windows. Some felt sympathy. Others felt anger. Most felt both. The HOA sent out updates, trying to control the narrative. They used words like regrettable situation and missteps. They avoided the word fraud. Everyone else didn't. The neighborhood changed. Meetings that used to be quiet became tense. People questioned everything now. Budgets, rules, fines. Authority only works when people believe in it. That belief was gone. One former board member moved out of state entirely. Another downsized into an apartment. Retirement plans vanished. Savings drained. No one was cheering. No one was clapping. This wasn't a victory parade. It was accountability. I kept my distance. I didn't attend HOA meetings. Didn't talk to reporters. I focused on restoring what had been interrupted. Leases renewed. Farming schedules adjusted. The land healed faster than people did. One afternoon, I ran into a former board member at a grocery store. He looked tired, older. He didn't avoid me. He nodded. "I'm sorry," he said. Not dramatic, just quiet. I nodded back. "I believe you," I said. And I did. Not because he hadn't done wrong, but because consequences change people. We stood there for a moment. Then we went our separate ways. That's how most of it ended. Not with shouting, but with silence. The developer quietly dropped their lawsuit after a settlement. They didn't want their name attached to it anymore. Banks closed files. Courts archived documents. The story faded from local news. But inside that community, it never fully disappeared. People learned something. Power isn't ownership. Paper isn't truth. And rules don't replace law. As for me, I went back to walking the land. Same paths my grandfather walked. Same fences. Sometimes I stopped and thought about how close it came to being gone. How easily paperwork can erase things that took lifetimes to build. That thought stays with you. It makes you careful and grateful. The land was mine again, but it wasn't the same land anymore. It carried a lesson now, one written in court filings, not soil. And there was one final moment that stayed with me. Months later, I received a letter, not from the HOA, from a homeowner. She thanked me. She said the board had scared people for years. Fines, threats, rules used like weapons. She said what happened forced everyone to look closer. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. I didn't reply. Some stories don't need answers. They just need to exist. And I thought that was the end. But there was one last thing. One final consequence. Not legal. Personal. Something I didn't expect. After the lawsuits, the frozen accounts, and the forced sales, life returned to something close to normal. But normal felt different. Walking the fields in the morning, I noticed things I hadn't before. The smell of fresh hay. The way the creek bent around the old oak tree. The sun rising over the hills, golden and slow. I realized something. The land itself didn't change. It was the people around it who had. The HOA board members? Their houses sold. Their savings drained. Their credibility gone. Quiet. Broken. Some moved far away. Some stayed, living smaller, quieter lives. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. I just let karma, law, and patience do their work. And then, months later, came the final reminder. Not a court order. Not a headline. A simple moment on my land. A neighbor I barely knew came by with a basket of apples. She said, quietly, "You saved us, whether you know it or not." I didn't respond at first. I just looked out over the land. At the hills my grandfather once walked. At fences I had repaired by hand. At a community that had learned the hard way that rules cannot replace justice. Then I smiled. Not loudly. Not triumphantly. Just a small, quiet smile. Because I finally understood the truth. Power doesn't come from control. It comes from responsibility. From standing for what's right. Even when the world tries to erase you. I could have sold the land. After all that, I had the right. It would have been profitable. Easy. But I didn't. This land wasn't about money. It was about legacy. Family. History. It was about proving that even when someone tries to take everything, patience, knowledge, and the law can turn the tables. Now, years later, I still walk these fields. The land is mine. The lessons are mine. The quiet justice is mine. And the HOA? They exist in the past. A cautionary tale for anyone who thinks greed can replace responsibility. The most satisfying moment wasn't winning in court. It wasn't the board members losing their homes. It was standing on my land, unshaken, knowing I had done everything right, and watching karma quietly do its work. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's all the victory you need. And for me, it was more than enough.